right, you're good to go.
Hi. Are we here?
Yes.
Everyone.
We are back for our second Canna Chat of the day. And I might be a bit biased, but this is going to be my favorite Canna Chat because it's about my favorite thing in the world, media, and with some super amazing executive boss woman that I am honored to be in the video sphere world with. I'm going to just jump straight into introducing them and let these ladies take it from there because they really, their portfolio will speak for them. We have Elena Frankel, the founding editor-in-chief of Woman in Weed magazine. She's also a boss, entrepreneur in so many cannabis endeavors. We have Lulu Cohen. She's a super, super OG boss publicist who did amazing, innovative campaigns in cannabis and hip hop, and she's working on the legalization of cannabis. We have my girl, super publicist, Sarah of Grass is Greener PR, and we are here to talk about all things as it pertains to cannabis and media, being a cannabis publicist, being an editor, the current state of cannabis media, and where it's going. So I'll let you ladies just literally take it from here. Introduce yourselves, and then we'll jump into the conversation.
Sure, I'll go first. It's Lulu. I have been working in this space for over 15 years. I started out in TV with ABC News 2020, and then did a lot with music, worked with record labels and everybody from Wu-Tang to Carole King and back again. And then started in cannabis in 2014 with Afro Man and a very successful video that I created and produced. Passing the steps.
Very successful. The name of it is, I mean, super successful because, come on.
Oh, because I got high, the positive remix.
Yes.
Absolutely. We'll delve. With Afro Man and partners, Weed Maps and Normal in 2014. Very proud of the work. We were everywhere basically at a time when cannabis wasn't as crossed over into the mainstream. And we really got crazy media from the Washington Post to Rolling Stone to Time. And I think to date, we've got about 11 million views. And it's a fun video. And it tagged the vote to legalize in 2014. And it did it in a really playful, fun way.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Want to jump to Elena? Or Sarah, I'm sorry.
Sure. I'm Sarah. Hi. I founded Grass is Greener PR in 2017 after I began working in cannabis PR in 2016. As far as I knew at the time, I was in celebrity stuff, so I was doing some work with Mariah Carey and a couple of Bravo celebrities. But I needed a little bit of a shift in my life, and it actually started when I got a ticket to High Times Cannabis Cup that I won on Instagram, and I couldn't attend, so I gave my ticket away to a friend who was going to California that weekend, and I was born and raised in New York, so I'd always been partaking in the cannabis scene in a sort of black market type of way up until that point and self-medicating, but I just had a thought ever since that day that, you know, these brands are winning and taking category after category in these competitions. They might want some PR backing. And that's when I joined, and it, for me right away, just was a very symbiotic relationship. It was finally a way where I could be myself at work every day and not have to feel that stigma, and in fact be more powered by it, empowered by the people I was working with to make things just and right for everybody. Thanks, guys. Happy to be
Awesome. Here. Elena, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Hi, everyone. I'm Elena Frankel. Oh man, I guess I've been in this business underground for 30 years and above ground for the last 5. Everything from cultivation to content creation. When I was creative director at One Kings Lane, I suffered a traumatic brain injury, a 4-inch fracture to the back of my skull, left me like a stroke victim. All the doctors told me that it was going to take a year of bed rest for me to heal. At the time, wife, mother, job, career, my husband was like, I don't think so. We're going to find something else. He came to me and said, I think we're going to try CBD. At the time, I was like presenting like a stroke victim. So I was like, blah, 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 blah. But he understood me pretty well. And I'm pretty sure he understood that I was saying to him, there's no way I'm getting stoned. I'm not trying THC with this. He's like, nope, it's CBD. Let's give it a whirl. We did. We were incredibly lucky enough to have an incredible community based on the last 30 years of being in the industry and really understanding and learning and educating ourselves. And when I came out of it, I quit my job. I started Indigo and Haze, an online marketplace for CBD products, highly curated and only the best of the best from soil to sale. I knew that it was going to help people, but I also knew that they needed to be educated. We need to be educated. Educate before you medicate. And so I started Women in Weed magazine. It's now turned into a book, which is right now distributed by Simon & Schuster and on Amazon, as well as indigoandhaze.com. So we got the access to the great product on indigoandhaze.com, started the magazine Women in Weed, turned into a book, really focused on design and inspiration as the third part of this business model. And here I am.
Amazing. So between these women, we literally we just stared at almost 40 years of experience collectively in the cannabis space, in the media space, and even all of you kind of spoke to working underground before, you know, showing face. So how do you feel, all of you, how do you feel that the cannabis space in relations to media and starting different brands has changed within the last few years, and where do you see it headed personally? Your opinion on that?
I can start. In a lot of ways, we've come a long way, and a lot of ways we haven't come very far at all, and a lot of ways we've taken a couple steps back. I think that there's an incredible opportunity and there's an incredible march and move towards obviously legalization in a lot of the states, whether it's medicinal or adult use. I think there's a lot of positive changes being made in the stigma attached to it and the education on the history of the war on drugs. I do think that we're still woefully, painfully behind on supporting people of color, supporting women, supporting all of the people who have been so affected in the last 30, 40 years. And I think that it's going to take a lot of time to undo or relook at all of those things, but we are really pushing, and especially one of the reasons why I started Women in Weed magazine was because I wanted to make sure that women, and all women, ages, stages, whatever it was, had a voice, whether they were new to the industry, whether they've been there for a while, whether they were cultivating, extracting, science-based, retail, branding, whatever it was. I wanted them to sort of have a place to not only express their stories and tell their stories, but also to connect to other women.
I agree. I think, in terms of the current news cycle and the media trends, it's become so open in the past 5 years, and that's with a lot of hard work. A lot of people did, especially the nonprofits. But the news cycle is so open now that we have to be really careful the way that we curate. And especially as PR people and branding experts, we need to make sure that we're not just throwing stuff up there to throw it out there, and that we're doing our research and we're giving statistics if possible. And we're really thorough when we're sending out ideas and creatives and pitches.
Yeah, based on science and truth. Amen.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, the taboos that are still there. I mean, if you think about it, if you're Gen X or you're a baby boomer, we grew up as a Gen Xer. I grew up, wow, it was taboo. I just happened to have a really cool dad who always told me that pot should be legal, which was not the norm back then. And he is one of my inspirations. But now you think of millennials, they grew up with the change. And Gen Zers they don't even understand. What are you talking about? You know, it was taboo. You couldn't talk about it. It was black market. So they're growing up with a totally different face. And I think we can address that separately, but we have to think of it as a whole to move forward. And especially with social justice, there's a lot of work to do.
I do think it also, you know, as publicists and as people who are working in the space right now, it's really easy and um it's hard to turn away business when somebody's coming to you with a budget that's like a reasonable budget in this space. But I do think it's our duty as well to only support and back brands that, you know, are using ethical, you know, quality products, that are putting out something that we're proud to promote, that are, you know, doing something charity based in their organization. Um, you know, I think we have a lot of the marketing power all the time as PR people, and we need to wield that power to make sure that the brands and people that we're representing are a reflection of ourselves too, and what we stand for and the quality of products that we require.
I agree, and I think part of that also has to do with the language that we use. You know, the idea of using the word cannabis now versus marijuana, and separating marijuana from hemp, and hemp is cannabis, using the phrase adult use versus recreational, or illicit market versus black market. I mean, these are things that matter. And I think as people in this industry, whether it's on the media side and in writing and producing editing, or on the PR media side, you know, it's important that the press releases, the stories that come out, really focus on not only, like I said, the science and the truth, but the correct use of language. And that, I think, is really important at this point.
Yeah,
Definitely. And as leaders, with what we're doing, I think that that's going to stimulate change. And part of that change needs to be, you know, underlying with realism. You know, a lot of back in the day, it was you could just throw something out there and it didn't matter. But now with cannabis, you have to have realism under it and numbers. And I think something you guys mentioned, charity work is so important. And I've always said that with clients that I've worked with is, you know, are you working with a charity? Are you, you know, are you a foundation? What are you going to do to give back when you're in the cannabis realm?
Agreed. And I will say too, though, on the other side of all this, because this got serious really quickly, and it's an important, you know, emphasis, and the foundation needs to be there. But there's also something to be said at this point about this idea of education also coming through entertainment, and this idea of edutainment, and really, especially with our, you know, social media and really like quick, you know, attention spans, this idea of putting together ways to enlighten and inform and educate people through these sort of educational quick moments, I think is really also an exciting point that we're in. And I love to see the incredibly clever and beautiful ways that people are using visual language as well as the word to sort of create these moments that were really impactful.
So true. And I think what in 2014, when we made that video, and as a producer, I consider myself creator of content, original content, and producer. When we made that, that's a long time to be in weed, since 2014, and it was, you know, and so I'm really an old timer when it comes to that. But you know, the edutainment factor, it's such a great word, that we used in that is so goofy and silly, and he's on a sofa, and but the words, you know, were at, you know, lower thirds on the bottom, and it resonated back then. But now it's so different, and that kind of playful silliness, and he was really high, and he was on the sofa, and it was moving, and he was talking about legalizing. But now, bless you, there's such change. That sort of silly, easy role, it's not in style anymore. It's totally changed.
I know, but what I don't want the industry to lose is that quirkiness and that sort of weirdness that is so integral to the original vibe of this whole world. And I think to sort of the trick is in media is to take all of these like pieces of goodness, this entertainment, this truth and science, this quirkiness, and to sort of start to roll it up into a new vision of what cannabis can look like for the world. And it's really important because the spectrum is so wide. You get from hardcore medicinal, really important medical breakthroughs that are happening with cannabis, all the way to adult use and the silliness and the Friday night or the videos. And so to find your place on that spectrum is exciting, but it's also very challenging because it's so open, because there's so many opportunity. You really, as a brand or as a magazine or as a publisher, whatever it is, you really need to focus on what it is you want and how you want on in this world on that spectrum.
And that's just part of being innovative and creative and unique, and that's so key. And quickly, I had a conversation with a friend at Mary Jane who told me, no, we don't want to run any content that isn't going to focus on, social justice and access and education and legalization. He's like, he said, we just want to focus on that heavier side. And I thought, that's so interesting because that is part of how it's changed. And he's like, if you're going to pitch me on original content on a TV series, that's what I want it to be. And they're actually starting something different. It's called Teal that they're doing over there. And I think at Weed Maps too, I had a similar conversation. So it's changed and it's more serious, but it's still, like you said, you have to find that provocative end.
Yeah, ladies, we have a comment from Heather Richmond. I think it's really good to speak to this conversation, where we are in the conversation right now. She said, we need to stop making fun of ourselves as a culture. We are also educated professionals. People need to take us seriously. Our industry is not a joke. How do we find that happy medium? What does that look like in your opinion?
One thing I always like to bring up is legalization in Washington. So I really like to look at the fact that they've blurred the lines between medical and recreational. And I think that this is something that applies to, a lot of questions that I get. I think that because they have blurred the lines between medical and recreational, it kind of shows that there are wellness properties in this. And if you could take other wellness industries seriously, you can take cannabis seriously. If you can take, the fact that somebody can be doing something in a recreational way that is helping them unbeknownst to them. So if you're going to play tennis, if you're going to do something, if you're going to work out, if you're going to go drink a matcha latte, all of those things we can accept as normal and serious. And I think that we should be able to apply those right on over to our industry as well.
Yeah, I think it's a pivot, and I would say, Heather, it's happening. We're already, it's a business. It's traded. I mean, there's interest from huge corporations, and that is part of the problem. And the fine line is corporations that are trying to take it over from mom and pops and not giving, that what's due to fight the war on drugs and help the people that were incarcerated. And that's a whole other flip side of social justice. But it's changing and it's pivoting, and we are being taken seriously, I think. But it's been a long fight, and there's still a long way to go.
I think there's two parts of this elevation conversation. I think that there's a need, of course, for the industry to, as you said, pivot and elevate itself and to be taken seriously. There's no doubt about it. But I think, again, going back to this, I think, Heather, you put it, making fun of ourselves. I think that that's always going to be there because of our history and because of the leaders of the history for so long, and that getting back to that like quirkiness. And I think what's going to separate the real, the new from the old is, again, I'm going back to finding that way to mix and bring that sort of quirkiness and kind of making fun with the seriousness. Because either way of the either extreme is not going to work. Either it's going to be super corporate and everyone's going to scream, oh my god, it's super corporate, or it's going to look like 60 stoner pothead bro. And if we can sort of figure out a way to create a vision that balances those two, I think that's what's going to elevate.
I agree. And it's hard, and we play as branding experts and PR people, we play a big role in that. And
Yeah.
that's why this is an important conversation.
Yeah, and I think we're also at a point where I mean, when else have we ever been in an industry that it's at its beginning? And so, you know, Heather, you might be seeing a little bit of figuring it out at this point, because that's what we're trying to do, is figure it out. And so I think as it sort of moves and matures and goes from, you know, sophomore to, I mean, freshman to sophomore to junior to senior to graduate school, wherever we are in that metaphor, you know, I think we'll start to see brands elevate to what you're hoping to see.
I agree. And when I started in 2014, everybody's, oh, you're getting into it. It's the wild, wild west. You know, it's at the very, baby beginnings, and you have to figure out how to tame it. And we still are a long way from taming it. So, but we've made a lot of strides.
In terms of navigating and figuring out the future, we had a brief call earlier, Elena and Lulu, and we spoke to the future of media. So now, we addressed the positioning and, serious and quirky and finding that happy medium. But in terms of means of distribution, whether it be, print or digital or new content creation or new forms of media, what do you see that looking like?
I think we can speak to what's happening right now with the quarantine. Like we've seen, I've not really been going after traditional media for my clients. Like over the past few weeks, I've been seeing how they can jump onto live streams and actually engage with either their target consumer face to face, or, we've moved beyond the static media where you're just watching something on a screen and there's no way for the consumer to respond. And we're moving towards, a two-faced conversation where people are talking back to one another, even like we're experiencing right now. We're watching people's questions come in and we're responding to them. And I think that that's what it's about. The customer, ultimately, what we're doing is we're selling product. We're an ancillary business for the selling of cannabis products. And, we're opening the doors for legislation in this, crazy sphere. But what we do ultimately sells cannabis. And the cannabis that we're selling, we're basically just, I guess we're going through different means to talk to the target consumer. Now it's social media. Everybody's on social media right now. So we need to take advantage of all of those people that are tapped in. So I think it's just changing. And we're seeing later this spring, we're seeing the launch of Quibi, which is, short videos that speak to a different generation or a different target demographic than we've been speaking to before. So we kind of have different alternatives to speaking to that customer. And I guess that's my response. Like we have to adapt to the changing times, the changing mediums to reach all of our demographics.
I agree, but that's not to say that, print is still important. And I think a lot of people might say, what? No, you're crazy, Lulu. But I think there's some great publishers out there that are working hard to do elevated social justice leaning print magazines. Actually writing for one of them right now. And, they're in mainstream markets. They're in CVS. And that's huge. And it's going to that older demographic, that mom in middle America who wants to learn more about, maybe educate herself. Maybe she's got pain in her fingers, and she wants to learn more about CBD. So I think it's important.
So I'm completely biased, but because the magazine Women in Read is print only, we're exclusively print. We have no digital footprint whatsoever, and it is working out really, really well for us. What's really working well, as Lulu said, is that we are on mainstream newsstands. We are in Barnes and Noble, we're in CVS, we're in Publix, we're in Whole Foods, we're in the smaller on the smaller newsstands. And that is reaching people who we would not normally be able to reach because of all of the noise online. And for me, the one thing that was really important to me when I started this magazine was not only to provide that sort of well-rounded experience for women in cannabis to voice their stories, but also to read, was that I wanted to let me backtrack for a second. The cannabis industry has an incredible ability to talk to each other. We're really good at being insular, and everybody talks to each other and at each other. What we haven't been so good at is getting the message out to a wider, broader audience, like Lulu said, the mom in middle America, or even the mom in upstate New York. And so I think that seeing the magazine on the newsstand, at the cash register, at the grocery store, seeing it at Barnes and Noble, and quite frankly, especially at Barnes and Noble, where all of the cannabis magazines in the past have been in the men's section, Women in Weed does not sit in the men's section. It actually sits in the current news, current events section. And so to see that in a different light, I think is extremely important. I think going back to all of the noise online, there's a lot of incredible, reputable places to get information online, and I appreciate and love them all. But there's a lot of places that are not as reputable and are putting out misinformation. And it's really hard for the average consumer to know the difference. And I think if you present a well-packaged, a well thought out magazine based in truth and science, also backed by journalists, people who have been writers and investigative journalists for years, that is going to give it a sense of importance and gravitas and trust. And that's what it's all about. Now, to Sarah's point, yes, social media and online experiences are really, really important. And for my brand, Indigo and Haze, I have a huge presence online. I do sell the magazine and the book through it. So there is some sort of digital footprint for the magazine and the book, but for content only, it's paid through the magazine. But I think that there needs to be a balance. I'm all about balance, actually. I have to keep using that word in all my answers. But it is really important to sort of be able to speak to the demographic that you want to, whether it's in print or social media, or you really have to be tight in your message and who you want to reach and how you want to reach it, and put it out there.
And I think that's so well said, because part of the difference is maybe when you look at some of the newer publications that are digital, like, that are coming, and Snapchat and Quibi, and, that's all about video. But print is sort of making a comeback. And it's a great area to be in, because it is sort of like the wild, wild west now for print to make its lane and stay in its lane, and to be able to grab that demographic that they were, my mother, would never think of using cannabis or CBD, but now, oh yeah, I definitely want to do that. And oh, here's a piece in a hardcover magazine, in a beautiful glossy magazine, makes her go, I'm in. And you're hitting that 50 to, dare I say, 90 demographic to educate them and make it come full circle.
I think too, Lulu, the means of distribution also speak to the generational gap that you spoke of, the boomers versus the millennials versus Gen X, is where the boomers the boomers are educated by print. They have a better understanding that print is more familiar, whereas though, millennials, especially Gen X, are like, oh, Quibi, 10 seconds, we're talking to a generation of people who write in 140 characters or less. So I personally love the resurgence as a millennial who grew up literally becoming a publicist because of, big, beautiful, glossy publications that you can open and read full stories and editorials and so forth and so on. As a millennial, I understand that happy medium of, yeah, I want the 15-second video, but I still want that magazine. I still want to be able to read, and I still want to be able to be well-versed, and that education is really important. I think even with doing this panel, we had about 3 different brands come to us, and they were strictly for boomers. There was a CBD brand for boomers. So many different brands are building for boomers right now. So I think it's all important. Print is important, this digital is important. It's really a matter of making sure that we get the information out there in an informed way. Like you said, the terminology has to be correct, and the messaging, the means doesn't matter, as long as the
right. And I think that that's something we need to talk about, because right now we're separating print with boomers, millennials with this. To me, it's not. Basically, if you have a brand, if you have a story to tell, you can tell it over any medium you want. You can tell it in print, you can tell it in Quibi, you could tell it in Snapchat. It's just how the messaging. So if you want to tell a bigger story, if you've got a narrative, if you've got some education, if you've got a founder story, an origin story to tell, print might be better. If you've got an edutainment, if you've got how to roll a perfect joint with blah blah blah, like that's a Quibi. If you've got a little Snapchat moment, you can be the same brand. It's the same message, and honestly, CBD for people at 50 and older is the same CBD for 22-year-olds. It's the same CBD. We're not,
I think what I'm trying to say is that their messaging may be received differently.
Yeah, but you can send them, so you can sell your CBD, or you can tell your story to all of those people, but you just have to pick the right
means
to tell them. So I don't want to lane people into certain, because I know 20-year-olds who read magazines, and I know 50-year-olds who read magazines, and I think it just depends what you're trying to say and how you want to say it, and who's the voice that you want, to tell your story. It's all about storytelling. Mm-hmm. It's just how you're doing it. And I think, Sarah's right. In the time of isolation and staying at home, the shift is towards that online experience until we get back out into the world. And Barnes & Noble's actually stopping accepting new magazines for a while because of the quarantine. So they're, so we shift, we pivot. And then when we're back out into the world and everything's back to whatever normal looks like, hopefully it won't look like what it was normal before, but we'll be able to, go back to the newsstand and get the magazine, as well as see the companion piece on social media.
I do also think it's worth saying that one thing I have noticed is that with most of the bulk of my PR experience being in digital media, one thing I've noticed is that a lot of people who have started off working in PR in like fashion and other industries prior, with a lot of editorial experience, tend to keep their contacts in editorial for a very long time. Whereas I've noticed a lot of embrace for people who have a lot of digital experience go towards people in digital. And that's like almost like an obvious thing, because obviously your contacts go with you. But that is something I have like recognized over time too. And I've seen like, oh, people in digital tend to embrace me more. They're easier to connect with and they're easier to find their contact. Whereas I find a little bit more difficulty in the mainstream and technically in the in-book publications, just in general, because there's a lot more barricades towards getting that contact. It's like, whereas if you hit somebody up for the first time and you say, hey, I would like my client to join on a Facebook Live. That's something I noticed like with a couple of years ago with the Daily Mail. I was having my clients go in and do Facebook Lives with Daily Mail all the time because I had a great contact with someone there who could make that happen. Whereas on the editorial side, sometimes it's like, let me ask my editor, let me ask the publisher. There's a lot more, I guess, just things in the way of getting your final story out there to the public. So I've noticed a larger embrace on the digital side, but I do see the value in all types of media because I do understand the widespread demo of the consumer reading it.
Yeah, Sarah, I completely agree with you. And I think it's purely based on real estate. So with a Facebook Live digital, like you can put up as much as you want and it's pretty cheap. You take out, you want to do a 1,500 word story in a magazine, like that's a lot of real estate.
Labor.
And that's, and that's an expensive proposition. And so I think that's why, and also to be honest with you, print people can be a little snotty. So, yeah. But I couldn't agree more with you.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like navigating both media and cannabis at the same time.
And people.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of people also act as gatekeepers that don't want us to tell the story of cannabis. Like realistically speaking, like there are a lot of like print publications that I've been reaching out to for years who still won't budge, because of their personal biases, not because I can't find an angle that doesn't fit into their, not only their publication, but their byline, but that they are really being gatekeepers of this and don't approve. So they don't want to write a story about it.
I agree. And that's another reason why I started Women in Weed, because I basically was sick of, not seeing the stories that I wanted to read and knowing that it was because of what you just described.
Right.
And these were incredible, getting back to Heather, these were incredible women who were really, you know, I was going to say high in their field, but high up in their field, and they switched over to cannabis. They're doing incredible story, you know, they're doing incredible work, and the stories are unbelievable, but they just weren't being told
Right.
because of what you described. Yeah, so I totally agree with you. Love it.
All right, ladies, we have about 5 minutes left. I want to open the floor to conversation, to questions, direct questions to any of our panelists, and also leave the opportunity if there's anything you wanted to leave with, anything you wanted to touch on. Elena, Alana, Sarah, Lulu. Pretty much.
I just wanted to say that this was, I mean, Lulu and Sarah, you guys rock. I mean, I'm so happy to be on this panel with you, and kind of for putting it, you know, for moderating. I think that the more that we can do these kinds of things, the better off we'll be. And I think that it's going to be, you're going to see more of it, and that's great. And I'm happy. But I do want to make sure that everyone really who's listening understands that, you know, Lulu, Sarah, Tana, these are professionals. Like, these women have been around, they know what they're doing. I believe that they are, you know, the authentic real deal. Just be careful online. You're not always going to get this authenticity, and to make sure that you do your research, that you also go and figure out for yourself what is the truth.
We have a question. We have Miss Mary Pryor here. Thank you for joining us, Mary, OG in Cannabis. She's asking, hey, how are we changing? How are you changing the way you do PR right now? Oh, she also said, I've been lucky because I have a deep relationship and I come from media, but I'm wondering how everyone is doing with this work, given that publications are only working with full-time staffers and not any freelancers.
Yeah,
It's been slow for me.
Really rough time. It's a really rough time, and you chug along, and I think you have to think out of the box. That's one thing that I've been doing, is trying to think out of the box to try to create mini videos and mini sort of features. But I'm using video to move forward with a lot of clients. So that's been helping me during this insane crisis.
I've been working a lot with influencers. So I've been kind of taking like a little moment back from PR. I'm kind of letting all of the madness blow over until we want to talk about something that, you know, actually has science-based evidence behind, because I don't want to just put all of my clients in front of the media right now for them to talk about something that they don't know much about. Like, I don't want people making claims about coronavirus that don't make sense. I don't want anybody claiming a health benefit to cannabis that we're not 100% sure of. So right now, I think it's better to take some of my leverage in influencer management and kind of seek out what brands are trying, you know, could use a push right now, doing some pro bono work for small businesses, doing some work, you know, for content creation, back to what Lulu said, with those influencers for brands right now, kind of doing a small pivot until we're essentially in sweeps right now. So that's what we kind of have to either wait out or become a part of.
I couldn't have said it better. With this time, we have one more question. With those influencers for brands right now. From Ashley, about breaking through on social media. We'll save that for our next Canna conversation. But I just want to thank all of you ladies, Alana, Lulu, Sarah. You are the best of the best of the best in cannabis and media. Thank you for being here with us. And I hope we can do more of these conversations, because the space is going to continue to change and we have to pioneer and navigate it. Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you, Tiana.
Bye, ladies.
Stay safe, everybody.
Bye. Be well.
Bye-bye.